Hello, everybody, and welcome to the last installment on James Bond. Here for friends occasionally not disagreeing. The Fun Pod, the Fun Cast. This is Cody wrapping up all of my hard work with this installment of the last 7 months. I even went back and redug into all these Bond movies to give out some best of today and some worst ofs as well. 27 movies we have watched over the last 7 months. I've been grading each of them on their theme, their title, the portrayal of Bond in the movie, the women in the movie, the villains in the movie, the plot of the movie, and the action in the movie. And we have some awards to give out here for our conclusion of all of this. General comments, I guess I will make before and after I go through these awards. First of all, you do see a little bit of Bond's evolution if you're to watch these from the beginning to the end. There are instances of fads and scientific beliefs in our society that are reflected in these movies, going back from the 60s, where there's a lot of focus on material wealth. If you think back to Connery's movies involving gold and diamonds and things of that nature. 70s, we had a lot of science and space exploration with some of the Roger Moore movies. 80s got a little more grounded again with Timothy Dalton and into Pierce Brosnan, a little more crisp and clean with the presentation of the movies. Um, Filmmaking techniques were definitely shown with some of the slow motion, rotating shots and things of that nature, up to a real modern feel with the Daniel Craig movies here at the end. The characters themselves have been upgraded, whether that is Bond himself going from one style to a more modern style, whether that is the ladies in the movies going from purely a romantic interest or a damsel in distress up to ladies who can kick ass a little more themselves. Villains who have the villains are interesting because they haven't necessarily improved their weird plots they have, although scarily enough, as technology has caught up with this franchise, the crazy ideas these villains have actually can be possibilities, I think, in our world today when we look at things like using satellites or taking over things using the internet of that nature. Some of the really crazy, far-fetched plots of the 60s and 70s, done today seem to be a little more possible, which is kind of scary, but that's where we're at. It's a franchise that has stretched, boy, almost, well, 60 years because this is our 60th anniversary, a little over now that I'm pushing into the next year, that Bond has been in America. He debuted in England the year before I started calculating my anniversary from. So in America, this is 2024. This would be the 61st anniversary. In England, this would be the 62nd anniversary of Bond. So if you look at movie franchises, and that would be a really fun podcast for us to do sometime to rank and rate different franchises. 62 years is a long time. You're not going to find many franchises that have A, withstood that long of a test of time, B, have been as consistent all the way through. That's maybe the most impressive thing about the Bond franchise. When you think of like whatever, Indiana Jones or Alien or the Marvel Universe or even the Universal Classic Monsters or Godzilla, or there's so many franchises out there. But when you think about this is one that never really went dormant. It's one that has sans, I believe, the Marvel universe now, the most movies. Um, you probably could make an argument for Godzilla there as well, I guess, if you think about a lot of the Japanese ones, and if you also think about how many times they've remade the Universal classic monsters into movies throughout their history. But in terms of just being consistent, every 3 to 4 years, boom, here's a Bond movie. Boom, here's a Bond movie. Boom, here's a Bond movie. And that consistency, I think, has kept the character alive. even though they've gone through so many of these lineup changes, whether it was the side characters of M being replaced by a new M, being replaced by a new M, or Q being replaced by a new Q, and then by another new Q, or of course Bond himself, which, I mean, if we go through this chronologically, we had Sean Connery, then we had the offshoot wacky Casino Royale ensemble piece, back to Sean Connery, George Lazenby, back to Sean Connery, Roger Moore for a stretch, Sean Connery again in the other offshoot, Roger Moore back again, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig. So we've seen a lot of change throughout the years looking at this movie. We've seen how many Blofelds did I figure we had seen at this point? Like 4 or 5 different people have played Blofeld, movie after movie after movie. So it's kind of interesting as well. And that doesn't even count the parodies, which I had intended to watch the Austin Powers movies also on this, and I just never got around to it. But sometime I like to go back and watch those again also and just kind of see, all the Easter eggs and homages to these movies that are in those movies. So all of which I'm saying here is Bond has been a very long running classic franchise for a lot of people. It's definitely one that I feel like is more, loved by men than ladies. Part of that has to be the early nature of this and how the characters are portrayed. I mean, Bond's an alpha male. He's always going to get the girl. He's always going to take the shot. He's always going to save the day. And we've seen progression of women in these movies become more of an equal to him as this has gone on, but it's taken a long time to get there. Man, I preached and preached that I was waiting for that all the way through, and finally we did get to it. But there we go. Okay, I think we're ready to start with some of our bests and worsts that we want to give out here. Um, so yeah, let's jump into this. So I'm gonna kind of mix up our formula slightly, and jump around here and there on this just so you're aware of what's going on with all of this. But I went through and I started to compare some numbers we've been taking all along the way and started to come up with some averages and started to look at some things and see where some trends happen to fall with the different actors playing Bond, um, as we go through. And I think we're ready to go through this. So I'll start off. Actually, we will do the title first, not because I planned it, but just because that's where I'm going to start with this. So, the title. Let's start with our award for the worst title of any of the Bond movies, which I gave a 1 out of 5 to. It was by far my least favorite title, in that I don't believe it makes sense in the movies. Matter of fact, I think I commented that it seems to be the opposite of this in the movie. But my 1 out of 5, getting our worst Bond movie title of all, goes to Quantum of Solace, which is such a nebulous phrase of all of the movies that have had nebulous phrases, except in this one, we don't have a Quantum of Solace. We actually have no break of peace in there. We go right into a crazy situation. Therefore, this title doesn't even make sense within the context of its own universe. 1 out of 5, Quantum of Solace, our worst Bond title. The top Bond titles we have 2 runners up, both getting a 5 out of 5. That would be From Russia with Love. Love that title. And Goldfinger. Can't get any simple and cleaner than that, but I'm going to give the best Bond title of any movie to The Man with the Golden Gun, which I just think is such a wonderful title. It's almost like a Sherlock Holmes story title. The Case of the Man with the Golden Gun. Dun dun dun. Makes sense. You know what the movie is about. It's about the big adversary, the Clash. It just makes sense in that one. So that's my winner for best title, The Man with the Golden Gun. We'll jump over to our theme next, just because we've already covered the theme in the Ranking the Bond Themes episode that we've done recently on here. And I should point out again, these don't match my rankings from that episode, and the reasoning being, in that one, essentially we were ranking it on any criteria we wanted. So for me, that was, is it a good song slash does it fit the Bond movie? And here I'm more ranking it on how good the theme is in matching the movie, full stop. So it has to be a fantastic song that matches the movie, which is a little different criteria. So that's where I'm at with that, because you can see I'm going to pick a different winner right here. My award for the worst Bond theme of all 27 movies is the same, though. It is Madonna's Die Another Day, which I gave a 2 out of 10 to. And that was from the movie as well, Die Another Day. My pick for the best Bond movies, well, we had some runners up here. So starting at the bottom here, I have some 9s out of 10s. So honorable mention, a runner-up goes to Billie Eilish, No Time to Die, 9 out of 10. Garbage, The World Is Not Enough, which is higher than it scored in my ranking episode, 9 out of 10. Diamonds Are Forever, 9 out of 10. And Live and Let Die, 9 out of 10. Paul McCartney, beautiful stuff. Good work on all those. I have a couple higher than that, though. My runner-up ultimately here is A View to a Kill by Duran Duran, which I gave a 10 out of 10 to, but it is our second best 10 out of 10. My winner for the best James Bond theme, after watching all 27, goes to Goldfinger, Miss Dame Shirley Bassey. Beautiful song. This has just got that iconic kind of a shrill noise to it. And it's just a great song. It captures your attention right away. And it's a simple song, which is why I docked it when we ranked them. But if you're looking purely for how it matches the movie again here, it's describing, or Goldfinger, the bad guy. And great song. So my winner of best theme, Goldfinger, Shirley Bassey. Okay, we're going to jump way over to the plot and the action next, and we're going to save some of these acting ones, more Oscar style here, coming up for us. In the category of action, we have a lot of movies that are ranked really highly on this one. Action again, my criteria here was, if you recall, looking for um, something that would be constant on screen, whether that was a chase, ski chase, airplane chase, hand-to-hand combat, people fighting, people falling, tumbling, using weapons, having gunfights, missiles, stuff blowing up. We're just looking for all those components of a traditional action movie. And we have 4 movies that are tied for the worst action, but I'll give one of them our worst of award today. So narrowly getting the worst ever action Bond movie with a 10 out of 15, Dr. No, Goldfinger, and Thunderball. Those are all Sean Connery picks, so yikes. Just not enough in there compared to some of the later movies, and that was actually the standard I started with, was kind of that those would be like a 10 out of 15, and the other ones took it levels beyond that. But my pick for the worst action in any James Bond movie goes to For Your Eyes Only. Yes, one of the more boring Bond movies. For Your Eyes Only, winner of our worst action of any Bond movie. The best action in any Bond movie, we had a handful here with 14s and 15s. I'm just going to do an honorable here for the 15s. Best action, consistent action on screen, we have Moonraker with a 15 out of 15. Octopussy with a 15 out of 15. Tomorrow Never Dies, 15 out of 15. Quantum of Solace, 15 out of 15. And Spectre, 15 out of 15. But my winner for the best action in any of the Bond movies goes to Skyfall with a 15 out of 15 as well. Just a lot to like about the action there. Again, constant, different people interacting, but with the gunfights and the helicopter attacking the house and chase scenes and just hand-to-hand stuff. It's really good. Really showcases Daniel Craig's physical side that he had three movies with a 15 score right there. So kudos to him. Let's go to our plot category. We have a handful of scores that are on the higher end here, but we will again start with the lower scores. So we had two movies score only 14 out of 30, which is really not good. 14 out of 30. So I'm saying they're getting less than half the points here. Hand a toddler a couple crayons and see what they can come up with for a plot in these movies. And the worst ones of all, narrowly taking second place with a 14 out of 30 is Diamonds Are Forever. And the worst plot in any of the Bond movies, you guessed it, For Your Eyes Only. A two-time winner. Congratulations to For Your Eyes Only. Worst action and worst plot. Very good. All right, now on the opposite end of the spectrum, plot out of 30 are high scores here after watching all these. Some honorable mentions with 24 out of 30, we had Live and Let Die. With another 24 out of 30, we had No Time to Die. With 25 out of 30, From Russia with Love. With 27 out of 30, Casino Royale. And by 1 point, the highest score we had for plot with 28 out of 30 goes to Skyfall. So Skyfall, also a double winner in those categories, much like For Your Eyes Only, just on the opposite end of the spectrum. All right, let's get into the actors, and then we'll get into the overall movie scores right after that. So let's start off with our villains, having watched a whole myriad of different people with evil machinations here, attempting to take over the world, seek revenge on Bond and MI6, kidnap people, kill people, etc. Who stood out to us at the end of all that? We know the Bond movies have a really iconic rogues gallery, similar to like Batman. But let's see who really was fantastic. We'll start off with our worst score. And we did have a few people score in the 5 range. That would be Mr. Green from Quantum of Solace. We have Largo slash Blofeld slash Fatima from Never Say Never Again. We have the bizarre villains of the Casino Royale ensemble piece, and we also have Largo and number 2 from Thunderball, all of which are real bad. However, the worst villain in any of the Bond movies with a 4 out of 10, the only one to get a 4 out of 10 because they were so bad. This award goes to Julian Glover for his performance of Aristotle Christados, the villain of For Your Eyes Only. There it is. 3-time winner of this movie. Oh my gosh. Aristotle Christados, Julian Glover's character from For Your Eyes Only. Boring villain. Boring villain, boring plot, boring action. Just not good. We can see that movie got a crap score, and we can see why here. But who did a good job? Let's flip the script on this a little bit here. Shout outs to some runners up here for villains in their portrayal. We have Dr. No, Joseph Wiseman's portrayal of the OG villain here. We have with an 8 out of 10. Also with an 8 out of 10, Mr. Big. And side characters Whisper Hook and Baron Samedi, or Samedi. This is Yaphet Kotto's Mr. Big and Jeffrey Holder's Baron Samedi. Also with an 8, sorry, that was from Live and Let Die. Also with an 8 out of 10, Robert Davies' character, Franz Sanchez from License to Kill. Nicely done. And our last 8 out of 10 goes to Gustav Graves, Toby Stevens' character from Die Another Day. So, might have been a terrible movie, but not a not a terrible villain. With a 9 out of 10, we got two people here. Goldfinger and Oddjob, Gert Frobe and Harold Sakata's characters, Goldfinger and Oddjob from Goldfinger, classic and iconic villains. And then also with a 9 out of 10, Raul Silva, Javier Bardem's character from Skyfall. Just a really chilling performance that he gives there. However, our winner of Best Villain of all of the Bond movies, my pick. No, it's not Dr. No. No, it's not Goldfinger. No, it's not Blofeld. No, it's not Baron Samedi. No, it's not Jaws. Oh my gosh, who could it be? 10 out of 10 score goes to the man with the golden gun, Scaramanga. Christopher Lee's character, side character of Nick Nack, played by Hervé Jean-Pierre Villachez. Christopher Lee, the perfect foil for James Bond, the man with the golden gun, my pick for top villain of all the Bond movies. Love it. Okay, moving on. Let's go to the women of the Bond movies. Out of 15 points, let's start on the low end again. My worst performances. No, I shouldn't say performances. I should say worst characters because this is not reflective of who the actresses are on these. But again, remember criteria I was looking for. Do they appear in a lot of the movie? Are they a stand-up character? Do they have a counterpoint to James Bond? Are they a bit of a foil for him or for a villain? Are they capable? Are they making decisions, fighting on their own? Are they able to, kick some ass, use a gun, fly a helicopter, drive a car, whatever? Looking for all those skills to make a cool character here and a really rounded character. So let's take it off the bottom. Our worst characters for Bond women, Octopussy, Maud Adams' character from the movie of the same title, 7 out of 10. Domino Derval, Claudine Auger's character from Never Say Never Again, 7 out of 10. And Denise Richards' Christmas Jones, 7 out of 15 for her as well on that one. Just really not great. So three-way tie for worst performance there. I won't single anybody out on that one. On the opposite side of all this, some 11 out of 15s. Jill St. John's Tiffany Case, honorable mention from Diamonds Are Forever. Solitaire, played by Jane Seymour from Live and Let Die, honorable mention. Pam, played by Carrie Lowell in License to Kill. And Isabella Scorupco, who played Natalia Simonova from GoldenEye, all of 11 out of 15. The higher than that ranking ones, we had 4 score in the 12s by my criteria. One of which will be named our winner here. The first one I have to say is kind of funny though, because the first one I have that I'll mention had a 12 out of 15 is actually the various women characters from the Casino Royale 1967 version, which was all over the place, but a lot of women were really prominently featured in that movie, which I really liked. But they're not going to win our award today. Also with a 12 out of 15 from No Time to Die, it is Nomi, Lashana Lynch's character, and also Madeline, Léa Seydoux' character. The two of them together, I mentioned in the last podcast, they're going to get a 12 out of 15. Tanya, Daniela Bianchi's character from Russia with Love, which I just read apparently had like a voiceover. So she was apparently just like the body and somebody else dubbed the lines, which I didn't know. Also very good. That character still really stood out to me 25 movies later. We'll get back to why that was in a bit. But my winner of the best Bond lady that has been in any of the films so far, and also with a 12 out of 15, if you know me, I'm not really high on this person as an actress in general, So the fact that I'm picking them as the best Bond woman of all time probably says they did a pretty good job with the character they had. And this is Jinx, played by Halle Berry in Die Another Day, who was a really hands-on character, was in a lot of the film, was a good counterpoint to Bond, could kick some ass as well. And I still don't think she's a great actress, but in this particular role, I thought she did a great job as a Bond lady, enough so that she's going to be my pick for the best Bond lady. Okay, we are headed to the next category. We got a couple things left to talk about here. Next up is Bond portrayal. So this actually is judging the different actors on how well they played Bond on the screen. So we have a total of seven that I'm going to count here. The six primary actors of Bond and then the various ensemble piece I included in this as well. What I did for this is if you've been listening to these, I went through and have ranked the Bond portrayal in all of the movies. So I did that um, movie by movie, but what I went for here was I took an average of each of the actors' scores and came up with an aggregate. So, in other words, if like you were to have a Bond movie with one of these people, how good of a performance would you expect out of 15 points as you did that? So here we go. A couple of awards first before we get to the averages. The worst portrayal of Bond, believe it or not, I went to Sean Connery, which seems sacrilegious if you're a big Connery Bond fan. But it was from Thunderball. He had a 10 out of 15. He just looked bored off his ass in that movie. And you can kind of see him starting to wind down maybe of wanting to play the character at that point. But 10 out of 15 is what we gave him in Thunderball. That was the worst portrayal of Bond on screen. The best portrayal of Bond, we had two tie here. And that is Daniel Craig in Casino Royale, and we'll count this as a straight up tie. He got a 15 out of 15 as a young Bond who was learning the ropes, trying to get into the system, a new 007, and he ties with, you guessed it, also Daniel Craig with a 15 out of 15 for Skyfall, where I just thought he had a wonderful range of emotions and just great, overall skills shown in the movie. But let's look at the averages. So if we were to make a movie, if we found a lost Bond movie, shall we say, by one of these people who made Bond movies as James Bond, what would we expect the score to be essentially here? We're averaging these out. So our bottom place is actually the various James Bonds in the old Casino Royale, which I gave a 12 out of 15 to. There's only one. That's their score, 12 out of 15. Coming in sixth place. So who's the best Bond? We hear all the time. Let's find out. With an average of 12 out of 15. Same as the last one, actually. George Lazenby. Not as bad as I thought people made him out to be at all. Um, he seemed a little stiffer in the role, perhaps, a little more aloof, but I found him to be charming, found him to be funny in the movie. Still took care of some stuff, still kicked some ass here and there. 12 out of 15 for George Lazenby. Next up with a 12.29, so just slightly better, believe it or not, is Sean Connery. The person most people associate with Bond, perhaps. Only did a little bit better. 12.29 is an average score for Connery. Next up with a 12.5, Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton has a 12.5. His, if you recall, was just really unique in that he was so physical compared to the Bonds before him that came. And he does show a lot of emotions that the older Bonds didn't have. Connery was more worried about hitting the punchline and landing the punch on the guy, and Timothy Dalton would straight up murder you if you turned your head. Like, don't piss him off. He was a mean dude, but maybe he doesn't have quite all the skills. Like his verbal skills were not as good as other people's were, that's for sure. Um, Seductive skills. I mean, he's not as smooth with the ladies as some of the other Bonds were either, but for physicality, he was fantastic. All right, just ever so slightly higher. We go from 12.5 to 12.57. Roger Moore coming in third place. Roger Moore, he's kind of wacky. I know it's kind of funny. My friends that are the hosts on the podcast here also talk about how he was older at the time, which is true. I think when he replaced Sean Connery, I think he actually was like the same age as Connery or older than Connery was. Connery was retiring as the character, and a new person was already older as the character. And he starts to look a little older as he got a little further into his roles, but he's going to come in third place for us here, 12.57. Now we have a big jump here. We're going up to 13.75, so a full point and 2/10 higher. 13.75 goes to Pierce Brosnan, who I thought really was the prototypical Bond. He could do it all, and he did in his movies, whether that was, again, be seductive to the ladies and be a smooth talker, whether it was fight and be physical, whether it was to, you know, jibe with the villains or M or whoever. He was a stand-up guy who could really do it all, and I still think in many ways he was perhaps the best well-rounded Bond of all of them. With a 13.75, Pierce Brosnan was fantastic through his four movies, of which I will also say, and I'll save that for a second as well, I guess. But all right, and our winner for the Best Bond Award shouldn't be a shocker here if you're paying attention. First place with a 14.2 goes to Daniel Craig, who is really this modern style of Bond. He's very physical, very physical. Um, he's icy. He doesn't let his guard down, but when he has emotional things, they resonate more, I think, with the audience because he doesn't ever let that shield down. He doesn't ever let it drop. So Daniel Craig, fantastic portrayal. His movies were all scored very highly in terms of his own performance. One of them was not scored very highly at all for overall, but we'll talk about that in a second here too. All right. Let's move on to the films themselves, our last category as we wrap this all up here. Um, it's been going on for so many months that I have stopped at a Funko Pop store in Chicago and I bought, I think, six Funko Pops from the James Bond movies. For Christmas, I got an Aston Martin Lego set that I put together. That was a lot of fun. I did that while I was watching the last movie, No Time to Die. I've played through 5 episodes of a podcast here on GoldenEye 007 as well, going back to the Nintendo 64 and talking a lot about memories I had of that and seeing how well that held up. And then, of course, all the movies here. And then we ranked all the Bond themes also. So this has really been an all-encompassing chunk of my life for the last 6 months. It's kind of left its shadow over top of everything I'm doing. And I had a lot of fun doing these, but I will say I'm happy to move on from them as well. Probably will be a while till I do something like this again. But, like we said, there's not many franchises that have this many installments either. So, all right, let's talk about the movies. Here we go. Before we give out the awards for the best movies, first I want to just look at some aggregates here. So I averaged out the movies by the lead star who was playing James Bond as well, just to kind of see with our overall score out of 100, what kind of movies they were in. Now, again, you can look at the portrayal of Bond that we just scored as how good those actors were in the role. But there's a lot of cases here where they were given movies with plots or villains or whatever that were weak, and that's not their fault as the actor. So this is more saying which era, I guess, of the Bond movies was the best. I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. What era was the best? Whose movies were the best? So let's take a look. Coming in last place, seventh place with a 68 average out of 100 is Casino Royale, the 1967 weird ensemble piece. Just a really fascinating one to watch. If you haven't seen that one, if you've only seen the 25 mainline entries, you definitely should check out Casino Royale just for how different it is. That's for sure. All right, 68. Moving up to an average of 68.7 is Sean Connery. So Sean Connery had a couple stinkers in here, I will say. We should mention again, Casino Royale was labeled crap when we rated that one. But Sean Connery had a couple stinkers here also. Thunderball was labeled crap, as was Never Say Never Again, also labeled crap. So he had two that kind of held him down overall, giving him a 68.7. Next up would be in fifth place, Timothy Dalton with an average score of 71 on his films. Now, he only had the two films here. But of those two, The Living Daylights, we also gave a crap award to, holding him down a little bit here with a 71 average for films. Next up is Roger Moore with 72. Roger Moore was in quite a long stretch of these also. Roger Moore actually had a couple instances of crap as well, which are Spy Who Loved Me and For Your Eyes Only, both crappy movies. Um, we saw the For Your Eyes Only a few times on here tonight. Oh, and Connery also had Diamonds Are Forever, which I love the song of, but he actually gave that one crap as well. So Connery actually had three craps on here. My goodness. All right, moving up to 73, average in third place. Surprising, George Lazenby. He only had the one film on Her Majesty's Secret Service, but we gave that a 73. Good enough for third place overall. Now, had he made more than one movie, perhaps that would be higher or lower. No way for us to know that. But for what it is, it's what it is. He got a 73. All right, and the big head-to-head showdown here with our two most modern Bonds. Coming in next, jumping up to 76.4. This is Pierce Brosnan. Now, Pierce Brosnan, other than George Lazenby, who only made the one film, Pierce Brosnan does get something here that nobody else has. I said I'd reference this later. Pierce Brosnan made four films: GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day. And as we scored those four movies, he is the only Bond movie to make more than, only Bond actor to make more than one movie that did not have a crap movie. Die Another Day was the closest with the 73, but even that score is really that low because of how god awful the Madonna theme was. I mean, if you replaced Madonna with Shirley Bassey, that would have been in the running for one of the better movies, actually. I know that one gets ripped on all the time, but it also had great action and also had Halle Berry as Jinx. Also had good villains. So here we go. And our winner for the best era of the Bond movies is Daniel Craig with a 79.2 average. That does take into account the Quantum of Solace getting a 66 crap rating, though, meaning the ones that he had that were good enough to raise that average up quite a bit from 66. So Daniel Craig's era is my pick for the best Bond movies, with Pierce Brosnan's right behind that. Okay, I think the last thing we have left here is to talk about which movies were the best when all was said and done. If I had you to go watch Bond movies this weekend, what would I tell you to pick? Well, here's what ultimately scored the highest on our ratings. So we have a tie for fourth and fifth place. That's just where I'm going to start this at. Subnote, I guess, the worst movies for Your Eyes Only and Thunderball, both absolute crap, down in the 56 range. Really, 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 really bad. But anyway, tying in fourth and fifth place, we have Live and Let Die. Roger Moore versus um, Yaphet Kotto's Mr. Big, Solitaire, James Seymour, Paul McCartney's theme banging. Great plot in this one, really fun. Great movie, scored an 82 out of 100. It ties with 82 points, Casino Royale, tied for fourth place. Um, Perhaps the best portrayal of Bond with a 15 out of 15. The plot, fantastic, 27 out of 30. Everything else is pretty solid. Villains could be a little better yet, but Casino Royale, good stuff with the 82. And the top three, here we go. After all of that, number three, From Russia with Love. Fantastic movie on a train. I'm a sucker for train movies. I think I described to our co-host Joe that if you're a fan of Mission Impossible, you probably like Casino Royale as your favorite movie. If you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes, you probably like From Russia with Love, or maybe Alfred Hitchcock might be a better choice there. It's just a different style of movie, but this one was a perfect title, 5 out of 5. It had one of the higher women's scores, also tied with 12 out of 15, and also had good plot, 25 out of 30. I love those tight, close-knit plots in a small setting, and this is what this movie is. Number two, the second best Bond movie of the whole run is the last one, No Time to Die, which, made me cry some tears over the death of James Bond, which I didn't know was coming. Highs in this one, the theme by Billie Eilish had a 9 out of 10. It was great. Nomi and Madeline as the women, 12 out of 15. The plot was really high with 24. Action was 14. Um, it was really nice, really emotional. Bond gains and loses love when he dies in this one. Quite sad. We get that Louis Armstrong reference in here again. All good things adding up to 84 out of 100. Good enough for our second best movie. And number one, yes, it's true. Yes, it's true. Some people say it's overrated, but by the scoring we have to do to be consistent on all these, and I mean, truthfully, if I just thought about which one was my favorite, a few of these would rank up there without the categories if I just holistically graded these. But this would be right near the top as well that way. This is Skyfall at number one with 85 out of 100. Bond portrayal, Daniel Craig, masterclass in a character, 15 out of 15 on this one. The villain, Raul Silva, Javier Bardem's character, fantastic. Also had, in my opinion, the best plot, 28 out of 30. Also had the best action, 15 out of 15. This was the one that really examined a different side of Bond. Although, let me say this in kind of a conclusionary manner here. I rated Daniel Craig the highest, both for his performance and for his movies. And he only did 5, and he's gone now. We know he won't be back, obviously, for multiple reasons, both in and out of the films. But Casino Royale into the Quantum of Solace. He was a new version of Bond, but we saw, him attached to a lady and lose the lady and then deal with losing the lady. It was so personal to him in those two films. And we hadn't seen that except for George Lazenby's On Her Majesty's Secret Service, oddly, where, he gets married and then loses her at the end of the film. And here we see Daniel Craig, who falls in love, is betrayed. You could argue for a good reason, but and then watches her die. Vesper Lynn die. Then we had the third movie he was in, Skyfall, where we're going to take it back to his childhood, go to his home. We're going to get M involved, Judi Dench, with the actual plot, not just kind of behind the desk where she's been for most of this. And that got really personal on a level that we hadn't seen on any of these Bond films before. We saw his story play out in who he was as a character and who he was as a man, and that really, I think, pushes this movie over the edge for me. But then the fourth movie he's in, Spectre, while perhaps not quite as strong as the other ones he is in, also is very personal. And not necessarily the Blofeld stuff because I didn't rate Blofeld that highly as a villain. He's like an adopted stepbrother almost, yada yada, revenge story, daddy loved me more than you type thing. There's that angle too. But it's the Madeline character, Lea Seydoux character that he falls in love with, and just that idea of like, I'm an assassin, you're the daughter of an assassin, you're the only person who could understand what my job entails, and seeing them kind of work on, this burgeoning relationship between the two is just lovely. And then it seems like he's almost retired. He's fallen in love in a way that, he usually ends a movie with sleeping with someone in a raft or a plane or a house or whatever. But this one, there was more than just that physical attraction. There was this deeper emotional connection. There was this intellectual connection between the two characters, and they had like shared experiences. Then we flip all that on its head here for the fifth movie that Daniel Craig is in. And this is his story, but it is just as much Lea Seydoux' Madeline story as we start with her as a kid in the intro, and we see her mom being killed by Safin, Rami Malek's character. I would say that wrong. And we see kind of them bond and her fall apart and then come back together. And then, unfortunately, by the time they are back together and realize their mistake and realize what they did have and realize what they're giving up and the fact that they have a kid, all of these things, and then they don't get a chance to act on any of that because Bond is on the lam right away with her and then captured and then ultimately dies in the fight at the end of the movie, trying to save the world, make it safe for his girlfriend and their daughter. And I think just the personal connections in these last five movies by Daniel Craig are so much deeper than anything we had, sans perhaps again that little flash by George Lazenby, but definitely none of the Bonds that were in the multiple films. Like Roger Moore never felt anything like this. Sean Connery did not. Timothy Dalton, nothing remotely close to this. Pierce Brosnan, it's kind of movie by movie by movie as well. So I think maybe whatever they decide with this franchise, whatever they decide to do with the Bond movies going forward, whether that is cast another man or if they're going to make Bond a lady or I don't know, some kind of hybrid, one of each. I don't know how they're going to do this, but they need to learn the lessons that these last five movies taught them, which is you have to have a character who has complexities for the movies to have more emotional depth to them for the audience. The rinse and repeat, fill in adjective, fill in villain, fill in machination to take over the world, fill in device, fill in blah, blah, blah of all the earlier movies. They're fun. They are fun. I'm not gonna say they're not, but they got old as you started to watch through a bunch of them. But if you give all of those same things, the same type of villains and the same crazy idea to take over the world, but put it in modern times and blah, 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 and reuse that in today's world, it can still work. You just have to have characters that we believe in and that we care about. And that's what they really did with Daniel Craig's characters. Um, so I hope he had a decent time finishing these off. I felt like there was always reports that he kind of didn't want to go back and do these again. But maybe he just wanted to maintain that the script was strong because I feel like it was for most of these. So I enjoyed watching through these. Like I said, over half of these I had never seen before. So this was really fun for me to go through. Anybody who has listened to any of these podcasts that I've been doing for the last 7 months, thanks a lot for sticking with me. And if you're somebody who regularly listens to our podcast, friends occasionally not disagreeing, thank you so much for that as well. This is going to be the final installment of the James Bond series. So leave us a comment someplace. Find us on Facebook, TikTok, X, Instagram, YouTube. You can leave us a comment or a rating on any of your favorite podcast platforms, of which we're on, I think, 9. In addition to all those other sites I just listed, you can go to www.fondpod or fondpodcast.com. You can check out our website, see who the hosts are, buy some sweet swag and merch off there, and continue to listen to us all here on the Fond Pod, the Fondcast. This has been Friends, occasionally not disagreeing with the end of the James Bond 60th anniversary series. This has been Cody. I've enjoyed my time with all of you. I've enjoyed my time with all the Bonds, and I'll enjoy all my time with all of you going forward. Thanks so much. Take care out there.